Football made simple. Become great at your craft by finding ways to make it simple for those around you. This is the Coaching 101 podcast hosted by Find a Way Productions with your co-host, Daniel Chamberlain and Kenny Simpson. What's up, coaches? This is the Coaching 101 podcast. I am Daniel Chamberlain. That is Kenny Simpson. Coach, little heartbreak last Friday, huh?
Yeah, I mean, unless you win a state title, everybody doesn't end how you want to. I mean, that's the way football or any sport goes, is one team is happy at the end of the year, and however many other teams are in that classification, can be happy later on, but they're not happy in the moment. And so our team made the semifinals, first time this school had ever been even really past the final 8. So big deal to get that far, and wish we could have played better. I think everybody, when you don't win a game, you always wish you could have done some things better.
Right.
But when you look back on our season overall, I think it was a very big step in the right direction, and the kids have a whole lot to be proud of. And but it's never fun unless you win the title. You never end on a high note, which is always kind of the sad part about sports. Is a really good life lesson.
I think it definitely make you check your perspective on what success is, right, for your program. You guys broke all kinds of records. You did all sorts of big stuff. You fell, I guess, realistically 2 games short of the ultimate goal, but there's a lot of teams that didn't even make it that far, right? So
yeah, and you got to remind the kids that, because of course they're upset, especially if you're a senior. A lot of guys that listen to podcasts probably played football, and I think that's a vivid memory that most people have, is when your last snap. Like, I think a lot of guys can remember the last time they strapped on pads, whether that was in high school or college or whenever that was.
Right.
Because you don't get to go back and do that again. And that could apply to other sports as well, but football seems to be harder because you're not going to ever play pickup football. Most of the time, you're not going to play that unless you just want to get hurt.
Right.
So it's tough. And so you can relate to the pain that those kids are going through in that moment.
For sure. That's choosing to coach football is wild, because it's like the only game you don't ever really have a pickup version, right? You can go play baseball or softball or basketball. I guess you could go run some weird adult track, a foot race. I don't know. There's a lot of stuff. Soccer, right? All those things you can just go play one-on-one or just a small pickup game. That's kind of it for football. So it truly is like you've put yourself in a position to experience some very big feelings of, this is it. This is truly the last time I'll ever do this as a team for a lot of those kids. Y'all got some kids that are going on to play the next level, right? And
because we have a couple that's their goal, and probably going to play some small college football. And then we got some young underclassmen that might be able to go a little bit bigger than that. But, 95% of them, this is it. And a lot of times, these are the highlights that you look back on later on and remember it. And we tried to enjoy the moment. That's the hardest part of. We played 14 weeks, and we played basically another half a season. After the season was over, and it's so difficult to not get caught up in just grinding it out and winning, because that's the goal, and to try to let these kids enjoy it too. And so we tried to find that balance the last 3 or 4 weeks, and hopefully they had a real good experience.
Awesome. Well, good job on another great season. Y'all ended up going 13-1. Was that the final record? Yeah. There's a lot of guys out there that would sell their left fingers for 13 wins in a season. So proud of you guys. And my coaching network was pretty saucy this year. A bunch of you guys are going into semis and second, third round playoffs, state championship games. So
good year, blessed year. My son is a junior; he'll be a senior, and so his class, they're 23-3. And I said, man, and a lot of classes that have that kind of record going into their senior year, and I hope you recognize how blessed you are. Now, he was around as a little kid, and a lot of those kids were. To watch the build up to get there, so I think they appreciate it. But the guys that have had good years. Congratulations, the guys that haven't had good years. I've been there too, and so it's just kind of a cycle. You try to build up and get ready for when you have a chance to make a run. You try to do the best you can.
And I don't want to get too salesy here, but it is also having these good years. It does prove that, like, I've been told since I started podcasting that, like, internet football doesn't win games, right? The stuff that you're selling doesn't win games. I've been told that to my face. Like, we all know that stuff you're selling is not real. It's gimmicky. It's for youth schools. Well, guys, 13-0, moving, going to state semis is pretty cool for internet football.
I try not to promote it a bunch because I want to coach, and I've got over 40 schools that won state titles in the last 2 years that run our offense. So, I mean, it is what it is, and I'm not saying one offense is better than the other offense. There's guys that win it running the spread, and we're going to talk about that today.
Yes,
there's not a perfect scheme. You can't. If there was, everybody would run it, and we'd all win. And it doesn't work that way.
That's right.
But I do believe there are certain things that give your kids advantages, and I think the main thing is having the belief of a system that's been proven to be successful, and then working on fundamentals. I think that's the kind of stuff that helps you have a chance to win. And I think if there are materials, whether they're mine or somebody else's, that you can get that can help you in that journey, why would you not take that?
Absolutely. Efficiency with your time, man. It's finally making a big stand in in football, is just being efficient. Sweet, Coach. Well, let's set the tone here, man. Let's get a good quote of the week, and then we'll get on into our conversation.
Yeah, right. So quote of the week, to us this year, I'm going to kind of go back real quick and tell a quick story on our season. So the week in the quarterfinals, we faked a punt, we faked a field goal, we had a trick play. We scored 24 points, and that was basically 17 of them right there. Because I think a lot of times you get in big moments and you sometimes worry about making mistakes instead of being aggressive. We did it again in the semifinals. We ran 2 or 3 trick plays. They didn't work out. We ran a fake punt. This one didn't work. We ran a couple trick plays. One of them did work. Actually, 2 of them worked because our mindset was, we're here. We're going to do stuff to win the game, not play not to lose. So the quote kind of comes from that. It's Simone Biles. It says, "I'd rather regret the risks that didn't work out than regret the chances I never took, or chances I didn't take at all." And that was kind of our mindset. That was my mindset, was this whole season was basically, we're going to try to win a game. And if it don't work out, it don't work out. But we are not going to allow the other team to dictate the terms of how this game is going to go. And to me, I think a lot of times with coaching, it comes down to that. Are you, defensively, we usually were a very kind of conservative team for a long time. And this year we said, no, we're going to get up and we're going to challenge you and we're going to make you earn it. And then offensively, same thing. When we're fine to run the ball, but if you're going to give us the RPO or the play action or the shot, we're going to take it. Yes. And our special teams coach took that motto to heart. I mean, we faked 3 punts during the year that were successful. We recovered, I think, 4 or 5 kicks this year, and we could kick it deep. If we had an opportunity to make a play, we were going to take it. We went after punts, we went after kicks. We were just going to be aggressive. And I think that was one of the things. There are a lot of other things, but one of the things that led to us having a pretty good year.
Weaponizing every side of the ball is just like, there's people that just, I have been even there watching and going, let's just kick this. Let's just move the game on, right? But man, when you start weaponizing your special teams along with your defense, your offense, it can get pretty saucy. So awesome, man. Well, Coach, real quick, why don't you tell us some ways we can simplify football for our staff and our players? What's up, coaches? I want to talk to you for just a few moments about your program. The longer I'm in this profession, the more I understand that efficiency is truly the name of the game. You're talking offense, defense, doesn't matter, right? Eventually, you're going to come down to checking out your efficiency. So I have to ask you, are you doing everything in your program the most efficient way, right? Are you fundraising the most efficient way? Are you representing your players and your program to the public in the best way? Are you planning to build the facilities the most efficient way? If you answered no to any of those, or really even if you answered yes to all of them, and you haven't contacted Mark Bridges at Ace Sports, you're missing a key step. So look, Mark and his team, they are the go-to group for video board and scoreboard installations for your school. They're not just football either. Mark can help you mock up your newest video board for that new stadium, or maybe even your old stadium, right? That's where Mark and the guys come in. And we're not just buying a flashy thing, right? Yes, it's nice. It's pretty neat to have that big scoreboard, that big video board, but you're also, you're investing back into that program. You're investing into that newest fundraiser. Sure, you can keep selling your discount cards, your beef jerky, hosting pie auctions, whatever it is that you like to do. But let's just be honest with ourselves, guys. We're not making enough money for those big ticket items. For the big ticket items like turf, an indoor facility, that's where you need a big ticket item fundraiser. That's what Ace Sports is offering you today. Guys, I've talked to Mark several times now, right? And it always comes down to big school, small school, right? Well, of course, the big schools can afford that new video board, but the small schools really can't. It's just not true anymore, man. Your school isn't too small, and I promise, okay? 1A, 2A schools, it doesn't matter. Mark and the guys, they're helping them out. Contact Mark today at mark.bridges@acesports.com and let him come give you a quote. Let him show you and your administration the plan. Now, really, it's the cheat code, right? Let him show you the cheat code that is fundraising with Ace Sports video boards. Tell him Daniel sent you. This episode is brought to you by Athletic Speed and Movement. At athleticspeedmovement.com, we've taken Del Basquet's 45 years of speed and movement training and put it all in one place just for you. You can get the same training that NFL players have been getting for years, collegiate players have been getting for years, and now high schools across the nation are paying thousands of dollars to bring Dell in to install his system, but we've got it online for you. It's time to help your team become faster, not just in the 40, not just their sprint speed, but between the tackles and their cuts while they're chasing down the quarterback. It's time for you to help them become faster everywhere. Jump over to athleticspeedmovement.com. There's an orange button there. Just click it. It says, get the keys to playing faster. You'll get the 3 core movement video from Dell. He's explaining the science behind it, all for just the price of your email. Check it out, athleticspeedmovement.com.
Coaching 101 podcast is sponsored by Findaway Productions. Findaway Productions also sponsors fbcoachsimpson.com for all your coaching needs, with over 30 coaching materials, books, as well as 50 PowerPoints and videos and smaller materials and the free magazine headsets. Findaway Productions also sponsors offensivecoordinatoracademy.com, all things offense, and defensivecoordinatoracademy.com, all things defense.
All right, appreciate that, Coach. Guys, if you haven't, reach out to the Mark and those guys. They're ready to take your calls now, right? It's the perfect time. The season's over. Let them come out, get an assessment made, get you a quote, get with your administration, start looking to get those video boards installed. Some of you are going to wait until like July or June and then be like, oh, I really would like to have it this season. And then it's going to be too late, right? You can get the foundation put in, but having that brand new video board, scoreboard up is going to be a little too late at that point. So do it early in the season, kind of get ahead of the game. A few things to talk about here, the clinics. So we've got nine different places to go this year. Is that right, Coach?
Yeah, 9 clinics, and they're starting to kind of get moving on registration. I've obviously been in the middle of the season, so I've not done a really good job of getting the word out. We're trying to kind of get the word out now. We got one coming up. If you're listening to this podcast, we got one coming up in like a week and a half, pretty much, in Charlotte. So that one's right before AFCA. So if you're going to AFCA and you want to get 2 birds, 1 stone, we're going to have the Gun Tea Clinic there. We've got one in Texas. We got one in Boston. And Daniel's coming to that one. One in Phoenix. I got Rick Stewart is going to come do some sessions. He just won a sectional championship run the pistol wing team. So he's going to come do a couple sessions there. I'm a big fan of Rick and his work. One in Seattle. We got one in Texas. We got one in Ohio, one in Alabama. And so they're all over the country. We want to make sure you get an opportunity to come, but obviously we want to know who's coming so we can prepare for it. So the earlier you can sign up, it usually helps us out.
Absolutely. Sign up now, guys. Get those tickets bought so that everybody knows how many people's coming. It'll be good for you. Boston, I'm looking forward to. I'm finally going to take the Kenny Simpson approach here, and what cool place do I want to go, and I can talk some football. So if you want to watch me stumble, bumble, and fumble through my very first ever football clinic, please do come to Boston and come laugh at me. Okay, we'll have a great beer at the the Bell and Hand Tavern afterwards. Okay, we'll go down there and I'll buy your first round if I screw it up too bad. I'll make amends.
Well, that'd be fun. And Boston, just like a lot of the other ones, guys that are coming out. Chris the Dad's going to speak at Boston too, and
yes,
we're trying to bring in people to come speak. So you can get Gun Tea all you want, but we're also trying to add in different elements, to these clinics. And so I'm glad Daniel's coming to that one, and Boston's going to be a lot of fun. It always is a lot of fun, always a big crowd. So we're excited about that.
I know this comes out in a couple weeks, so this should come out around Christmas time. Matter of fact, maybe if I did my dates right, Christmas Eve or something. I don't know. But Headsets Magazine. So it's just about time, right? If you're a writer for the magazine, if you want to write an article, you don't have to be like, just tell Kenny or me or Jamie or anyone, hey, I want to write, send us an article. Those are due like midway through the month here, though, right? So you're probably a little bit late for the January edition if you are just listening to this. But if you want to write for all the other ones, we're doing 6 this year, right, Coach?
Doing 6, yeah. And then if you don't want to write, you just want to read, they're already up on the website. At least the previous four seasons are up there. It's all free. So fbcoachsimpson.com/headsets. Be good stuff to dig through. There's a lot of really good information. And like Daniel said, we'll have new stuff coming. If you want to be involved in that in some way, reach out to one of us.
I love it. That's one of my. I do really like writing for them. Although it does put me back in my college days when it was what's that? Due tomorrow,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, whoo. Sometimes Jamie texts me or emails me. She's like, "Hey, buddy, this was yesterday's." Oh, my bad. So if you're a procrastinator, maybe get ahead of the game. Start writing an article now if you're going to be a writer. Sweet. Let's jump into it here, Coach. Let's talk about question number 1 here. So what we're talking about today is picking a defensive scheme. Obviously, it's that time of year when people start kind of questioning everything. How did my year go? Was I 0-10? Was I 13-0, 13-1? Somewhere in the middle. And we're trying to figure out where we can kind of lay the blame of whatever successes we did not have, which is good. You need to go through and judge your systems, judge your schemes, figure out what's, evaluation, if you will, and figure out how things are going to work next year. And so that's where we're going to do it today, is just looking for a defensive scheme for next year. And it might be the one you're already running. It might be something you need to change to. But we kind of want to talk, what should we consider when we are looking for that new defensive scheme?
Right. Yeah, there's no perfect scheme. We just said it right at the start of the show. Offense or defense, every scheme kind of has strengths and areas they've got to work on. And I think we're in the same boat. We run the 3-4 swarm. So I actually have that system available over at fbcoachsimpson.com. If you're interested, there's actually a free PowerPoint, so you can get the overview on that for free and see if it fits you. But every year we're always looking for how can we tweak what we do. So I don't necessarily think you have to say, hey, we're going to go from a 3 front to a 4 front this year. There's nothing wrong with doing that. But even within your own scheme, there are probably things you might want to highlight. Like we know we're probably going to be a 3-4 team. Made that decision a long time ago and kind of fits our personnel. But we also know that within that, there are different things we showed this year. We showed some slide to a 4 front. We showed some 5 front. We showed some different looks because if you play middle to smaller school football, kind of like we do, you may get a flavor of the week offense, like where you're going to get dead tee, and then you're going to get single wing, and then you're going to get spread, and you might get those 3 in back-to-back weeks. So you need a defense that can kind of adjust. So a couple things that I would say if you're looking at picking a scheme, you're coming in brand new, is you got to look at what your personnel is right now, and then what your personnel is in the future, and kind of figure out, okay, what matches who we are. Right. In my opinion, if you're thinking, hey, we want to run an even front, then you're looking, okay, do we have a really good Mike linebacker, and do we have 4 pretty good defensive linemen? Like, to run that scheme, you need some pretty good defensive ends, in my opinion, and you need a really good inside linebacker. Like, that guy's got to be a pretty good athlete to run that scheme because there's a lot more required of him to cover. If you just say, hey, we're going to look at an odd front, okay, what does your defensive line look like? You're probably running that because you don't have a lot of defensive linemen. But what do the ones you have look like? Our guys this year were all quick, all athletic. So we're going to move a moving front. Right. We had one kind of big nose. The other guys were all just athletes. Or do you have kind of 3 pluggers and you're wanting to, play a 4-eye and a nose and just make everything run outside? That's okay too. But you need to look at your personnel and what we have, and does this kind of fit it? Are we going to run a 3-4? We run palms coverage is kind of how we base everything. Well, to run that, you kind of have two relatively physical corners, and you got to have two safeties that are pretty good, to run something like that and be successful. I know Cody Alexander and a lot of guys are big in the three safety deal.
Right.
Do you have that stud that can play the third safety, the middle linebacker, the outside line, because he moves everywhere? So if you're going to run that type of scheme, do I have that guy or a couple of those guys? Because you don't want to run it and one guy gets hurt and you got to stop running it. And that's the worst thing you can do, I think, is set up any scheme, offense or defense, where one guy gets hurt and that scheme doesn't work. Like, that's probably not a great choice. So looking at your personnel, I think, is the number one thing. I think the second thing you got to look at is opponents. Who are we playing and what do we have to do to win? And not just looking at, like, don't just write your schedule down and go, all right, we're going to play 5 spread teams and 2 power teams and whatever. What are the games you have to win to get where you want to go? And that's different for every school. For us this year, our goal was to win the conference. Like, we knew that's kind of where we had got to it as a program, was we got to win the conference, and these are probably the 3 or 4 best teams we're going to play. And these are the types of offenses that they run. And then when we get into playoffs, if we want to make a serious run, these are what the elite teams are running offensively, which in Arkansas is mainly spread. Like, when you get up to playing teams you got to beat to get where you want to get, you're getting a lot of 10 and 20 and maybe 11 or 21 personnel, but it's mainly spread stuff. Right. So we've known that for 7 years now. So we went to a 3-4 because we felt that gave us the flexibility to kind of match these offenses. We didn't really want to be in a forefront because we didn't know if we had the guys that could really cover out there. We wanted to get more speed on the field to give us a chance against some of these teams. That doesn't mean a forefront can't do that. We just didn't have that personnel to do and match those types of teams. So that's why we chose what we did. So look at your games you got to win. So you may be, okay, we're not going to win conference, but I need to win these 4 or 5 games to get in the playoffs. What do those guys run on offense, and what would give them problems? Like, what gives you the best chance to match them? Okay. And then I think the third thing is you got to look at, can I adapt this scheme? Like, do I have the ability to coach this scheme, and can I make this adaptable? Like, that's the difference in a defensive system and just throwing junk out there week to week. You don't want a flavor of the week defense. You want to be able to make adjustments in game and week to week, but you want to be able to do that within the scheme you already have. So do you have the ability? We feel like in the ability for us, we can go from a 3 front to a 4 front to the offense like that and use the same terminology and not mess with our kids. We feel like we can go from a 3 to a 5 front, same terminology, and not mess with our kids. We can go from a cover 2 to a cover 3 to a cover 0 and not mess with our kids. So are you going to be coached up enough once you've bought into your scheme to be able to make all the adjustments necessary? Because in today's football, I don't think you can just sit in a 3-4 cover 2 and never make adjustments and stop people. It's just not going to happen anymore. The teams are too good. So do you have the ability within your scheme to adjust and to make, to adapt to what you're seeing week to week, drive to drive, play to play? Do you have that ability? So I think those are the kind of things you need to look at when you're picking a scheme.
Those are all excellent ideas. I think you also have to look at what are you physically and mentally prepared for as a coach? I guess mentally more than anything, right? Because there's kind of been an increase of these very high pressure, but we're going to give up some busts every once in a while defenses, right? People are, especially at small school football, where it's like, if you stop the run, you've won 80% of your games, right? Because people just don't have the quarterback or don't have just a go-getter at wide receiver. They're worried about getting 5 offensive linemen that can run, block power, and a couple backs that can make it fit up right. And so if you can take that away, you're going to win a lot of games at the small school level. So kind of ask yourself what you're ready for. Do you need to be in a bend but don't break system where, hey, we might give up 2, 3, 4 yards per play, but we're going to make enough stops. And when we get you to the red zone, what are you going to, it's a lot harder to score in the red zone? Or are you going to be one of these really high pressure, we're in your face, but you're going to slip some guys through our coverage every once in a while? You got to figure out where you want to be as a coach, What can you how can you maintain your composure when your strong safety, who you're making, come down and play high pressure in the box, gives up yet another tight end pass? Can you keep your composure and not act like it's his fault because you've been coaching him this way all year long? Okay, so and I think you have, Kenny, you talked about looking at teams. Who do you need to beat? I think you need to look at a little bit of the scheme. If you're going to face a tight end every single snap for this year, or 8 out of 10 games, maybe you need to find a forefront because they're going to make you walk down your outside backer anyways. Or maybe we pretend we're in a 3 front, but we just tell that guy he's a stand-up linebacker, right? You got to find ways to sell it to the kids as well. We're a 3-4. You are a stand-up defensive end, but we know the guy we're using is down there to handle that more aggressive pass catcher and a tight end. So, yeah, I think you do need to look at what you're going to face and fit your scheme to that. It's great to say, hey, we're the new, we're going to run a tight front or a mint front or whatever terminology you want to use. We're going to be in 4 eyes and we're going to bounce everything to our outside backers. But if I can pull him down every time and make him a defensive end, I've kind of handcuffed you. I've changed what you want to do defensively.
Yeah, and I think if you're at a small school, guys, I think you need to pick what you can do. But if you're a larger school guy, we're kind of in the middle there. We're kind of a middle-sized school, so we were blessed this year to have packages. Like the first year I've had, when I was at Cersei, we were 6A, so we had a couple packages. But this year we were able to say, okay, we've got about 15 kids we're going to play on defense. These are the 15.
Yep.
So we have, we had that true 5 front where we took 2 DNs and put them an outside linebacker. And it was kind of a package for us. And then we had the ability to go to a 4 front. Basically, we had a larger outside linebacker. So we're really still in a 3 front. But he was a thicker, stronger kid that we could kind of put down in there. So if you're at a larger school, I think that's the other thing you got to look at is within your scheme, do you have personnel packages? Like we have a nickel and a dime, and we had a heavy package this year. So it's something you need to think about.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, let's jump to the second question here. And you said it earlier that there is no perfect scheme. In fact, we've said it a couple times, and we're going to continue to say that throughout the next year until we're talking these changing defenses next year, right? Next season. Why isn't there a perfect scheme? Go ahead.
Okay, I didn't know if you want me to go first. Yeah, so to me, I think every defense, you kind of have it on there. I don't want to steal your point, but every defense does have a weakness. And then we're going to kind of hit on those. I know you've got some points. I won't steal yours, but I think a lot of times defense comes down, in my opinion, to fundamentals, just like offense does. I can give you, and I tell people this all the time, I get asked this offensively, but the same thing defensively. All our defensive stuff is out there. Like we got it drawn up, and you can have the playbook. And well, coach, how are you going to win if everyone knows your plays? Everyone knows the ingredients to make a great cake, but I still couldn't do it because the chef matters. Like quality of ingredients you put in there, the way you put them in there, that matters as much, if not more, than just a recipe. Now, you can give me a recipe and tell me to cook for somebody, it's still going to not taste very good. I'm not very gifted in that. Some of you guys are listening to this on a grill. You guys are excellent. You wouldn't want to eat my burnt stuff that I would probably cook. And so it's not just the scheme. How do you teach the fundamentals? Like, are you good enough to teach the basic things of defense? Do you guys tackle well? Do you teach leverage points? Like, do your kids understand how to function as a unit? Hardest thing, I think, going from junior high football to senior high football is making sure that your kids understand now there's 11 guys that want to tackle. So you don't have to make every tackle. So now you got to take that kid in 8th and 9th grade that would run sideline to sideline and make all kinds of tackles and teach them, nope, your job is A to C gap, or your job is outside leverage. So can you teach the fundamentals of here's how we fit, here's how we function as a group in coverage, here's how we avoid blocks, here's how we shed blocks. Those things are as important or probably more important, in my opinion, than whatever scheme you've chosen to get into. Like, can we make sure our kids understand their role, what they're supposed to do, and then teach them how to tackle, how to fit, how to cover, how to force turnovers, all those things that we would call fundamentals. In my opinion, defense is about 50% effort. Like if you're putting 100% of what's most important on defense, I'd say at least half of that is, will our guys play hard? Are our guys willing to play harder than your guys are? Okay. So how do I allow that to happen? That's easy to say, but how do I allow that to happen? Well, in my opinion, it means you run less scheme because you want your kids to play with technique and confidence. So some kids can play fast with more. Some kids need less to play fast. So we want to give our kids the ability to play with great effort. So that's number one. Don't worry about mistakes. Run your technique. What you're supposed to do. I think the 40% of the rest of it is technique. Do our kids know how to fit, how to do what we're doing? And then 10% I think is scheme. It's not that scheme is not important. It is important. But if you can't play with great effort and you can't play with great technique, then you don't have a good scheme. You either have too much in or you don't have enough in. And kind of the new wave of defensive coordinators is to try to cover up their lack of technique with scheme. We're not really good here, so let's add a blitz. We're not really good there, so let's add another coverage. There's nothing wrong with having tools to go to. So if you're listening to me right now, I'm not saying you don't need to have all these different tools. There's nothing wrong with them, okay? But if you take a pizza and you start adding anchovies and pineapple and you start dumping all that stuff on there, at some point you ruined it.
Right.
So sometimes it's better to have a little bit less so that your kids can play fast and slowly add. And we might want to do one of these in the off season, but in my opinion, sometimes I think we drown kids in our scheme up front and they never recover. I think you're better off. Let's roll through the summer in our base. Let's slowly add this, slowly add this, slowly add this, knowing that our end goal is to get here, to have all these different things we want to do. We may not get there, but we're going to be really good at what we do before we advance to something new. I think a lot of times we want to advance to the next new thing before we're good at the base stuff. Yeah. And then the last thing I've got on this one, I think you've got to make sure that your scheme can adjust to what you're going to see. Because there are certain schemes that really don't match up great. Daniel already brought it up. Three fronts don't really like tight ends because you got to do something different. You got to walk a linebacker down or you got to condense something down. And so if you're going to run a scheme that's going to have to match certain things, like 4-4, cover 3, probably doesn't match 2x2 spread. That's not the look they want to see. So make sure your scheme is going to be able to match up for the most part with what you're going to see. And the last point I'll put on here, and I'll give it to you, Daniel, is always think personnel above scheme. Always think personnel above scheme. 3-4 defense, good defense. 3 safety, good defense. 4-2-5, good defense. 4-4, good defense. All good. 4-3, good defense. Does it match your scheme, your personnel? Because if it doesn't match your personnel, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, those are all great points. Kind of some stuff I wrote down is just every defense is going to have its weakness. You're going to be out-hatted somewhere. That's just kind of the name of the game, right? Kenny, you talked about it. If you need more speed on the field, there's defenses for that. If you need more beef on the field, there's defenses for that. I think the future is having multiple bases, right? To being able to go, like you said, sometimes you're in a 4 front, sometimes you're in a 3 front. I think that's where a lot of people are landing now, and then just kind of keeping all that exotic stuff off to the side. I see a lot of coaches wanting to jump into the 3-3 stack, and because that's the new answer. Why? Well, my O-line coach hates blocking it. O-line coaches hated blocking a 4-eye too, right? Like you just go to a tight front, and that's really hard to run power and counter against because it's hard to down block a 4-eye. There's always a strength and a weakness with every defense, and so I don't get overcommitted because it's the new fancy thing. And you've already said it, that so much what we're doing here each year is just based on the players we have. So it's I can't get so stuck in a world of I'm constantly going to be this defense. And then when I don't have the kids for it, now we're just having a bad year. And instead of being able to say, hey, I changed what I was doing to fit the kids we had to be the most successful, I'm saying, well, we just didn't have the kids to be successful this year. It just doesn't make any sense, right? And I'm even a little counterintuitive, and I've said this a few times before, but the difference in like the 3 front and the 4 front. People always say, "Well, I didn't have very good D line, so we went 3 front." That's the weirdest thing to me because you need absolute war daddies in a 3 front, right? Like those guys are taking a double every single play. To where I truly think a 4 front's where you can go and run more athletic outside back or defensive ends. Run some outside backers or safeties down and let them play a little defensive end for you. So just make sure that whatever you're doing and however you're coaching it fits the kids that you're asking to do that job. Don't ask them to do something they can't do. And then the last one here is just, coach what you know. If you don't know what you're coaching, then you're not going to be able to problem solve. Kenny, you talked about all the schemes you're going to face throughout the season. So you might face the dead tee. You might face the flex bone, the wishbone. We see a lot of crazy stuff, right? Small school, there's a lot of coaches that go, I'm just going to grab the most random offense and run it because that way the defense can't get a feel of what I'm trying to do. I'm always going to get their random defense every week because they're going to have to put in a new defense to stop me. So think about that going in. Is what you're trying to coach flexible enough to handle all those strange offenses? But on Friday night, when it's time to problem solve, do you know enough about your defense that you can go out and make a change, but stay fundamentally sound, right? Stay gap sound, stay number sound, and give yourself a chance to be successful. Let's jump to the last part here, Coach. And so, taking all this we've taken into account, and how do we settle on that single scheme? So we're going to run this thing next year. Maybe it is 3-3 stack. Maybe it is a 3-4. Maybe it is a 3 safety. How are we going to decide exactly which one we want to run?
Yeah, I think we've kind of hammered home on it. It needs to match your kids, and that means your kids that are here now and the kids that you're going to have in the future. And I think that's the biggest thing. If you take nothing else away from today, is make sure it matches what you're going to have. I think that's huge. And Daniel, I think as you study into more and more defenses, you kind of go, okay, here's some adjustment we can make within the system if we don't exactly have, whatever it is. This year we ran a 3-4 and we didn't really have just those studs, so we just made a lot of movement type stuff. But there are times where, hey, maybe I've got some big ones that we can adjust and do. So your scheme may look different. A 3-4 can look very different depending on what you have, what you guys are able to bring to the table. And so I think every defense has adjustments you can make, but there are certain ones that I think you got to look at your personnel and then again look at what you've got to win. What do you got to do to win? I don't know what state you're listening from, but if you're in the South, more than likely, or the West, basically anyone that's not cold, if you're in those areas, pretty much the teams that tend to win state are at a larger level are spread teams. That's just kind of the way the game is kind of moving. So you need to make sure you have a defense that can match that. But if you are in the Gulf, whatever this area is here, and you got to play Harding University, you're going to have to beat a flexbone team to get where you want to get. So you need to look at you're in Georgia, you're probably going to be a wing T team. So you need to look at what are the teams we're going to have to beat to get where we want to get. So I would really, really look at that. Big thing for me is dive in and learn all the ins and outs of it. Whether that's 3-4, 4-4-2-5, whatever that is, there's a lot of guys that have put a lot of information out there. I know Joe Daniel has a 4-2-5 defense. I know there's some 4-3 stuff. I know Cody Alexander has some 3 safety stuff. I've got some 3-4 stuff. There's nothing wrong with learning a defense you're not even going to run.
Absolutely.
Like to me, learn it because you may not we're a 3-4 team. That's what we run. But if we ever have the personnel to run some 3 safety stuff, we may have a package that we use, and so there's different things you can learn and you can get from these guys that have already put out a lot of information. And it doesn't have to be mine. It could be whoever's. If you want 3-4, we've got it. Just go over to fbcoachsimpson.com. There's a bunch of 3-4 stuff. If you want 4-2-5, I'm sure it's out there on the internet. Go start with a basis and then make it your own. That's the way a coaching should be done. So I think a lot of times, like Daniel, people that are being rude to you or whatever to you is a lot of times they don't understand. We're not saying you got to here's the book, run the book, and don't change it. We're just giving you, hey, here's a book with some basics, and then make it your own. That's how everyone learned football is study a really good scheme, pull from it what you can do, and then make it your own. I think that's really important, but you need to know the ins and outs because if you're running a system and you don't know it well enough to make adjustments, offensive coordinators are going to find it and they're going to pick you apart. Like, what are you going to do? It's a chess game. When you make this move and they make this move, what's your counter? What's your counter? What's your counter? And if you don't know your own system well enough to have a counter, there's nothing more helpless than being out there Friday night and not having an answer, like not having at least something that can give your kids a chance. You're not going to win every game, but you want to make sure you're giving your kids a chance by being able to make adjustments. So that's really, really big for me is, do you know whatever you're running well enough to know where it's going to be attacked and how you're going to handle when it gets attacked there? And if you do, man, you probably picked a pretty good system and you've probably done your research and you've given yourself a chance to win. If you don't, because you're trying to run a little bit of this and a little bit of that and a little bit of this and a little bit of that, you're in trouble. The last thing I'd give young defensive coordinators is this. Your instinct, because I watch it all the time when we're doing JV games, we always let our young coaches coach the JV games. And junior high coaches and seventh grade coaches, as coaches are learning, I was the same way. Your instinct is going to be to try to blitz and guess and help your kids that way. That's normal because that's the quick, easy pill you take. If I blitz into this play, I can create something. And there's times you may need to do that. If you're coached well enough, you can run your base and get stops. And that's what you need to focus more on that than trying to have the perfect play call on defense to get off of the field. Nothing wrong with having some blitzes. Nothing wrong at all with that and trying to help them. But if you're relying on you guessing right to get off of the field, more often than not, you're not going to get off of the field.
That's right. We kind of already said it here. You look at the players you're going to have in the upcoming years and figure out what's going to fit them the best. You don't want to be swapping, schemes every single year. So look for something to get some longevity out of it. The more I coach and the longer I'm podcasting and learning, I'm constantly learning football. My wife is tired of hearing me learn football, but I'm doing the air raid cert right now. No intentions of running the air raid. Well, I can't say none. It's kind of a part of the system I'm learning offensively anyway, but I'm not going to go run Mike Leach and Hal Mummy's air raid tomorrow. That's just not going to happen. But I'm going to take pieces out of it. But I'm going through that, right? I'm always learning. I found that really defense, man, it doesn't matter what front you run. Put kids in a position of success. You're building fronts. Even if you're a 3-3 stack, you're building a 4 front every time, right? That's how football is. You can't have 2 unmanned gaps. So you're going to put somebody there somehow. So if you're a guy that, you really need to be calling blitzes every time, Coach Simpson, you just talked about this. If it's going to be in your nature that I need to be able to tinker and move people around and call these different blitzes, and it's always a new kid on the move, find you an odd front and look at a 3-3 stack, look at a 3-4 and build your 4 front that way. If you're a guy that, hey, I just want to be able to literally say run base and know that we're fundamentally sound and I don't have to be hyperactive and I can worry about problem solving, go with a 4 front. You shouldn't be leaving any double unmanned gaps or consecutive unmanned gaps. So you're going to be okay. So it kind of can come down to personal preference. What do you want to do? If you want to be super busy and look, I've seen what our offensive signal callers look like on Friday nights. If you want to be the guy that has 3 or 4 signal callers and you're out there doing all this craziness, right? You look like you're doing a 70s disco dance. Find an odd front. Call a bunch of blitzes. It's just kind of whatever makes you happy. Understand you're all getting back to the same thing. We're all going to be running a 4 front through building it in one way or another. Very few people are dropping 8 and rushing 3, and you can do that from a 4 front. So it's not no one thing is that much different than the other. The other deal is, what are you comfortable running? What are you and your coaches going to be comfortable going out and learning? Because there is going to be learning with any new system, which means you got to put time into it. So if your staff they're checking out after the final game of the season and you don't really see them until spring install and they're not doing much football in the off season, maybe they're too busy. Maybe they got other sports, or maybe they just really don't care. They're a teacher that's helping out, whatever. You might want to stick with something very, very simple and probably stay with what you're already running as long as it kind of checks all the rest of these boxes. If you've got a bunch of guys that are super passionate and they're going to put in the time and effort, you can go learn anything you want to, right? So it's just how much time and effort are people going to put into, how much time and effort your coach is going to put in. Because once again, we've both said it now. If you can't go out and problem solve on Friday night when things aren't going your way, or you're constantly just having to default to a crazy blitz, then you're probably not going to find success anyway. So make sure you guys know what you're doing.
Well, a lot of it too, Daniel, when I was at Cersei and we went one way, how many of your kids go one way? This year for us, basically our box on defense and offense went one way. So we had all kinds of stuff because they had, they basically had all practice with those kids. But we had 3 DBs that basically had to go both ways the whole game. So we had to be a little more vanilla in coverage type stuff than we would have liked to have been, simply because those guys play both ways. You only get them for half the practice. It's hard to make in-game adjustments when they're not really coming off of the field. A lot of them were new to playing DB because when you're in a school that doesn't have just a ton of athletes, those guys got to go both ways. And so that might be your situation where you've got everyone going one way. Well, man, you can do a lot more. Like Daniel mentioned, not just coaches, but players. If all your guys go one way, of course you can do more. You got more time with them.
Yeah.
If all of your kids go both ways, you're probably going to need to be a little more simple, especially if you're putting a bunch of stuff in on offense. And I mean, think about these kids. If they're going both ways, they got offense, special teams, and defense. That's a lot to put on a kid. So you need to kind of weigh those things.
Awesome. Well, Coach, man, I think we checked all the boxes here today. We talked all the pieces. If you guys didn't get the big topics there, we said it a lot. Base things on your kids. What do you know? What can you coach? What can you problem solve? These are things you need to be asking yourself. It's not necessarily what is the local college running, what is the national champion running, because that'll pull you all over the place too, right? Like you said, Kenny, we're about to watch. Well, it's 12-team playoff right now. So any of those schemes, but they're all spread based at the D1 level, they're going to run off and they're going to have a national champion. And you can adopt that scheme, offense or defense, and run with it. But Harding University won it, last year? And they're probably going to win it again this year.
Oh, they got bopped out, man. They only made the final 8. Yeah.
So, but if you just follow national champions, you're going to be going all over the place because different things win every year. So find something that fits what your kids do and what you can coach. Let's crash out of here. Last point, Coach, and that's what not to do as a coach. What's our lesson for today?
Yeah, I think I've kind of hit on this already, but I think the main thing is don't worry so much about scheme that you ignore fundamentals. I think that's huge for any young coach listening to that. I was the same way. Is we want to go out there and let's say we got a 2-hour practice and we're going to spend an hour 40 on scheme, implementing scheme, working scheme, and we spend maybe 20 minutes on fundamentals. Like how to backpedal. You can put in whatever coverage you want. Are you working how to do that? Like, are you working with the kid on, the technique needed to run that coverage or run that blitz or run that whatever? I would spend more time on technique, especially early, because we got in the playoffs this year. You better know how to tackle at that point. Like, we're still going to do a little bit of tackling, but at that point, it kind of flips on you where now you can put more scheme in. But to get to the playoffs, you had to have been good at technique to get there. Yeah. So spend a lot of time up front on technique and fundamentals. That will allow you to do more scheme on the back end. Don't get them backwards. And that, a lot of times we get them backwards and we can't tackle. And so it doesn't matter what scheme you run.
Awesome. Appreciate that, Coach. That's a good one. All right, one last time, guys, go check out Ace Sports. Those guys, Mark and Ryan, they're busy. They're hustling this offseason. Reach out to them. They'll get you on the board. They'll come in and talk to you and your admin and look at what you can do with a new video board. I've said it every single week. It is a cheat code for fundraising. Let those guys go to work for you. New books are out. The 6.0 came out this season, right? So we do have the Gun T 6.0. Go get you the series. Start with 1 and then add on. I think I still have to update. I think I'm at like 4 or something maybe. So got to get my library completed and maybe get a bigger library. I'm starting to stack more books than shelves, I think.
Goal, man. We're trying to put something out every year, and we got the 6.0 out. We got team themes 1 through 4, which you can get any of those. Of course, defense. We've been talking. We got all the 3-4 swarm stuff. So I got a D-line manual. We got the overview. We got practice organization. We have a youth one if you're a youth coach, and so a lot of 3-4 stuff over at FB Coach Simpson as well, including videos, PowerPoint, all that kind of stuff.
Perfect. Social media wise, you can find me at Coach Chambo OK on Twitter/X. You can always email me at chamberlainfootballconsulting@gmail.com. Jump over to my Patreon, patreon.com/Chamberlain Football Consulting. You'll find tiers there for learning. Something we're starting moving into the month of January will be the kind of the football coach curriculum. So just teaching coaches what they need to know to be a good coach. And there's lots of people that have different versions of this. But it's just going to be kind of what I've put together over my years from the guy that had no idea what I was doing, literally trial by fire as a DC, to now where I can go out and help other coaches. So trying to help you guys get there. And then the YouTube, which is going to be an ever-growing thing at Coach Chambo OK. Kenny, where can we find you, sir?
All things FB Coach Simpson. So FBCoachSimpson.com, website, ton of stuff over there. FB Coach Simpson at Twitter or X. Then all the Facebook groups are starting to get bigger and bigger. Or you can email me at fbcoachsimpson@gmail.com.
Awesome. Podcast is at Coaching 101 Pod. We appreciate you guys. 75,000 downloads. There at the end of November. Once again, this episode's coming out a couple weeks later. That's a huge number for us, and we cannot tell you enough how much we appreciate you guys for listening, for downloading these episodes every week. The feedback we've been getting is great, getting lots of emails, lots of comments and stuff on Twitter. So guys, just keep it up. We love the interaction. If there's anything that you need more from us to make this a more successful transaction for you, please, email us, let us know. We'll hope you join us next week as we continue to make the complex more simple. Please consider subscribing so you always know when the episodes are out, and leave us some reviews. Whatever platform you're using, someone else is using as well. Leave us a good review so other people can find the show. We'll leave you with this. It's hard to beat someone who never gives up. No matter the situation, find a way.